what's important with this plan is that it's not just a plan. It's also a further set of recommendations, and I think my little slide advancer is there, now working. And so I mentioned the orange boundary that was our study area, and we've been intensely studying that, and that's what you see in that drawing for the most part. And so that's the core area of our recommendations with the arena in the center of it. But that's not quite enough, we think, particularly from the conversations that we've had with the community, that there needs to be a larger umbrella put in place of policies. And we're going to share some of those with you tonight. And we think this umbrella, we don't know yet the exact geography, but there are the Canal neighborhood, the areas of the city that are most likely to be impacted by the arena, its events, the traffic associated with that, and the likely redevelopment that will occur in the city around that. And so we need policies in place to protect people and to ensure that the development of this area happens appropriately. And so we're working on that. It's important to recognize with a planning project of this kind what it means when we talk about planning timelines. That the idea for the arena is almost 2 decades old at this point. And we're still 3 years out from the opening of the arena itself. And so we're sitting at this point where a lot of decisions need to be made, but that the ultimate evolution of this district may take years, may take another 2 decades to be fully realized. And so we're sowing the seeds for long-term growth, which I think is an important thing to consider, particularly if you'll entertain this abstract diagram for just a second, that there are, at some point there was one idea, one decision, and that was let's get an arena and let's put it where it was. And we've been in 17 years of some incremental decision making, but there are thousands, maybe millions of decisions that have to be made before the district is fully realized. And we think it's really important that it's hard to figure out all of the things that need to happen in the middle, but we think that having a very good vision in place and a set of actions for tomorrow or for December will ensure that you can get yourself on the right path to developing that. And so we have 20 actions that we want to talk about tonight, and I'll highlight a few of them at the end of the presentation. But we think that there are policies around how we guide the growth of the district, how we ensure that people are protected and supported, communities, how natural systems are elevated and not hidden away, are not further degraded, and then policies about how we create places for people in a wonderful city to live in. And so from there, we have these actions. There are 20 of them, and we think there are 20 critical next steps for the project. These can be hotly debated, and we will do that. Do you want to advance it up there? There we go. All right. So if you've been to any of the Canal District meetings, we think we hear a lot about the past, and when we think that there's some value in thinking about why this area of the city is the way that it is. It's low, it's wet. There are drainage problems, and that's why in these old maps that are 2 centuries old, this area, the Canal District, were old rice fields, and so this is old rice plantation. It's always been low, and is there another one of these up there? So rice plantations, there were yellow fever epidemics, which many of you know about, and the Springfield Canal was built to drain this area to move the white culture of crops away from the city, to move mosquitoes away from the city. And after the land was drained and dried out, industry moved in, and you can see that here in this map. And then through to present day, you see a legacy of, this is an industrial map from the 1950s of the city, and you can see all the traces of all of these railways coming in, left an economic impact in the area, some of which is now, industries that are, almost no longer in business, and also a physical legacy. And this is the viaduct that's along Louisville Road, where the Springfield Canal cuts under there, going north to the river. There's also a social legacy here in place that we know is incredibly important and partially divisive in the city, but also an incredibly important basis for what you grow a community on. And in this case, in particular, African American home ownership. There are multi-generational households that still own houses that they bought in the 1940s, and that's something for us to protect and celebrate. Carver Village is not the only neighborhood here. There is a patchwork of neighborhoods on the west side that we think there's absolutely no reason through the development of the Canal District that any of these neighborhoods, anyone presently living in these neighborhoods, should be displaced. There's no name, cultural identity, anything in these places that we think is not absolutely in accordance with what the Canal District can be. So that's on the table, and we have policies we think that can help support that. So there's these three histories that weave together: social, natural, and physical. And you can see it in the city itself, and it's sort of amazing to see, the historic district and then the patchwork of the west side, and the very intentional intrusion of a large piece of highway infrastructure that's dividing the city in half. And so there's wetland here, there's industry, and there's infrastructure that just sort of reinforces a cultural divide that's been in place forever in Savannah. And so you could say there are many different Savannahs. There's historic Savannah, and there's West Side Savannah. There's very public history that people travel all over the world to come and visit. And then there's sort of a hidden history of the West Side that we need to bring out and express and celebrate. And in the middle, dividing these two, at least these two Savannahs, is all of this infrastructure. And so if anything in this process, what we're trying to do is figure out a way to take the issues that are central to this project, infrastructure, water, new places for people to live, and use that as something that helps knit the community together so that we can start building one Savannah, at least in this district. So this is a central part of where we're coming from. We think that in sort of moving forward in the spirit of this one Savannah, that there's the opportunity to create common ground here. And in particular through these different systems, through social systems and natural systems, and new places to host civic life. And so that's what we're going to go through. So I'm going to run through a series of ideas that we have about how this could develop. So what's behind that drawing that you saw out in the lobby? So we're looking at an area that's not a blank slate. And these are our hand drawings. These are early ideas. And so the first one is that there are absolutely places that have to be protected. There are the Waterworks neighborhood east of Stiles. There are pockets of Springfield Terrace west of Stiles. There is the entirety of the Brickyard neighborhood that sits within this orange boundary, which is what we're studying in the Canal District. There's no reason those neighborhoods need to go anywhere. And so we want that. We want this plan to help support that. And so the houses that are there, we think the houses should be there. We think more houses should go on vacant lots, and these neighborhoods need to be supported and reinforced. There are also historic structures throughout the district. Not a lot, but some very significant ones. Bridges, railways that we think could be repurposed. The Waterworks building stands out. The old Pearl Smith School. These are real foundational elements that in the long run will thread history and character through the Canal District. After the places we protect, we think there are places where nature needs to be rebuilt and celebrated. In particular, there's large patches of habitat and wetlands in the north side and also in the southern portion as the Springfield Canal comes from under the highway from Cloverdale. We think at least in those places that nature needs to be rebuilt and people need to be given access to that space. I will show some images later. And that the canal needs to be cleaned and restored. The water is dirty, water needs to be cleaned, the banks are crumbling, they need to not be crumbling. And so at a minimum, those things need to happen. And many of you know this, but for some of you maybe haven't been out and walked all through this area of the city. But there are amazing moments, and there are also some very degraded ecosystems. And this is in the back of the Brickyard neighborhood, and many of you know the viaduct and the canal there. So, in addition to these natural places, that there is a lot of water that flows through this area and up to the Savannah River. And we think that not only do we need to support that and support natural systems, but in the center of this place, in particular next to the arena, we think that there needs to be a new civic space for the city, a different type of park, a gathering place, something as significant as the other great parks in the city. And it just so happens also that a lot of water is running through there, and so that needs to be a place that also supports the flow of water and ecosystems. So we have some ideas about that. That idea of a civic space has always been a part of the arena ideas. This is the current design of the arena itself from sort of this point up. This point down is still being designed, but we think that this, in addition to space on the other side of the canal, has the opportunity to be something really glorious. So around that framework of protected places, natural places, and civic spaces, we think that there's a lot of area for the city to grow. Long-term growth of the city of Savannah. This is a place that if we can handle stormwater correctly, and we can sort of build a civic foundation, the city can grow here. And that means new places for people to live, new jobs, new destinations, new activities. And so this is sort of a basic use of the city that we see possible. Some of those spaces you know well. Like a great example of it is the balance of the city lot south of where the arena is going to locate. This is once the city services, the trash and everything come off, this is the kind of place that needs to be reused and repurposed and put back into greater service for the city itself. Through the district, we need to think about new infrastructure that connects people together. Not people in cars, not machines, like actual people, social forms of mobility. And these ideas are nothing new, but that we think this district needs to be threaded through with pedestrian and bicycle paths as primary pieces of infrastructure. And so this segment is essentially what's known as Tied to Town. This segment is the connection to the west side of the Savannah Beachy Trail. We have some ideas that I'll share with you in just a second about how we might be able to connect over into MLK, into downtown next to the visitor center. And of course, then a loop around the civic space. In addition to that primary spine, there needs to be many more connections, and these are not all of them. But there needs to be connections into areas that the city is going to grow. There needs to be connections into existing communities, to existing assets like existing parks. Between the old Waterworks building and the Pearl Smith School, there needs to be many, many places for humans to connect through this district. And there are assets that are sitting there now, pieces of infrastructure that used to connect long distances through the railroad, and we think that these can be repurposed to help serve this this role of connectivity. And so this is that old viaduct along Louisville Road, the old Central of Georgia, and the highway coming and swooping over and going up to South Carolina. This is the Visitor Center and the Georgia Coastal Center, Battlefield Park. And so we've been studying this area, and we know there's many ways that people are going to move in and through this area. Boundary Street is very important. Cohen Street is very important. But we think there could be a new system that's put in place in this area that is sort of a premium amenity, like the highway is for driving, that there needs to be something to get pedestrians back and forth into the historic district. And so what this drawing shows is a connection over to MLK with a new sidewalk and a path that would come along, a new bridge where there used to be an old bridge that crossed over between those viaducts, a connection at Louisville Road that would be able to bring people down to the canal and in, and then back up to the Savannah River. We think it's also possible, and maybe one of the best long-term opportunities for a very strong connection, pedestrian connection, is also a bridge that could come off of that embankment of along Louisville Road and thread through this space here and then go into the Canal District. And so we think this is sort of a big opportunity, and it's an opportunity not just to move people back and forth through healthy mobility, but also an opportunity for there to be a cultural overlay. And in this case, connecting Battlefield Park to the west side, we think there are memorials, historic opportunities, new trailheads that can be associated with it, heightening the identity and heightening the history that's been sort of obscured on the west side as a part of the larger narrative of Savannah. This path network also has the potential to expose people to new environments that they don't see. And so some of those natural areas that I showed earlier, some of them are wet and will need boardwalks. Some of them are under pieces of infrastructure and actually could be a very exciting place to be. And some of those are within parks that are wet and need to sort of express the ecology of this area. And so we think this is a real opportunity. Not only is it an opportunity to create place and something that would probably generate a lot of interest in this area, but we think that it also has the potential to move a lot of people. And so one of the recommendations that we're putting on the table now is we're saying we recommend to you that for the arena itself, its mobility picture, that we try to limit the number of trips, the people going to the arena, to only 50% of them parking in the district. The rest of them will be moving through rideshare, shuttles, and bicycles. And in particular, for the long-term success of the district, we think shuttles, so transit, bicycling, and walking provide the most value to you, most value for your dollar, most value in terms of place creation. And so this is something that we're putting out here, and hopefully the panel tonight will debate some of that. Natural systems. And so I talked a little bit about the need to address the natural systems in this area. What are the challenges that you're facing? And I think that this is one of them, and we've been over this before, but this is the 100-year floodplain as it's currently drawn. You can see that the arena, where the arena sits, This is not a Photoshop job. It sits up on a high piece of land. So this is up out of the floodplain, which is a good place to invest your money if you're going to invest it in this area. And so one of the issues, and we discussed this at the last meeting, but all of this area is very, very low. And so this is a topographic map, and we've exaggerated the colors, but you can see this is 0 to 10 feet. And you all live in Savannah, so you know that the city is flat and the city is wet. But it means that when there's, that on an average day, you've got houses, we'll call this the Waterworks neighborhood, and a little canal there that is not sufficient to handle the flow of stormwater that's moving through this area. And what happens is it overfills its banks, and pipes that need to drain over here back up, and you get flooding in the neighborhood. And so one of the things that's going on is through this process, we're presently studying the movement of water in this whole basin. And just as a point of reference, the Canal District area that we're studying is here. This is miles south. So all of this water from a drop of water lands down here. It's headed to the Savannah River, and it goes through here. And so as that drop of water is going along, it collects a lot more drops of water, and huge, huge volumes come through here. And so what we need to do is we need more space for the water to flow. So we need a wider canal that acts as a floodway to move that water through. And there also needs to be a place to hold some of the stormwater to mitigate the floodplain for all of this area. And so as a working proposition, we're saying stormwater park and a floodway canal to be widened to reduce the risk of flooding in this district. Not just in new places that people may build, but in the neighborhoods that are there now. We studied different ways that the canal could work. We studied the idea that, could you do a bypass and create sort of a basin where there could be more of an amenity there. Right now, we think that the best idea, at least the best idea we can come up with, is that this park, as I said earlier, needs to be a heightened expression of how water moves through here. And I'll show you that now. And so this is an idea we have of, you can see the arena here on the left side. This is the floodway essentially, and we think that you can create a wetland park on the other side of this, so that when flood volumes of water come through, that the water comes and can back up into this area, and when it retreats, there's an actual amenity here. This is not something new. This is not something we've made up. This is something that it exists in other places and can be done here. And so you can see this is the level of the water, and this is the arena. What we're proposing is to excavate down a little bit below the water table and build wetlands along the edge of the canal. This will help clean the water and also help create an amenity. You may have seen these drawings out in the lobby, and I encourage you to take a look at them. They're both fun, but also very serious. And can make great spaces, and so we've pulled some images of these of a wetland park in a very flat, wet area, of boardwalks moving through spaces like this, of gathering places like arenas with steps that go down about 12 feet, which is the distance that you have to go from the arena level down to the water, and creates great places for people to gather. And so we've started looking at this, and this is an aerial view looking at the waterworks building and looking over the west side with the arena. Right now, we don't yet know what's going to go into all of these places, but we think that a park of this kind sets up a great framework for growth, a great framework for long-term growth. And so I encourage you to look at this drawing out in the lobby after the meeting. Let's see here. And then on the north side, where we were showing the the larger stormwater park where the Savannah-Ogeechee path comes in and the old Savannah-Ogeechee Canal. We think that a more natural space can and should be built there, and it's natural but gives people a little bit of access with a few moments in that space for gathering. So place, so those are the natural systems with place. We wanted to start with the streets. That I think it's incontrovertible that Savannah has some of the greatest streets in the world, definitely in this country. It's sort of known as a place that you can walk. These are great streets, and this isn't a point of comparison between the historic district and any place else. It's just to say there are great streets here, and they're shady and wonderful to walk down. Those shady and wonderful streets are not present currently in the Canal District, and so these are just views of streets in them, Burnett and Styles, and these are not very hospitable places to walk, and so we think that needs to change through the course of this project. And so one of the things, there are projects already underway for Gwinnett and Black, Gwinnett and Styles up to the arena. We're recommending the work that's done on those streets continue all the way up to Louisville Road. In addition, in purple, we think there's a whole range of other street projects that need to be done. Work on Styles south of Gwinnett, the west side of Gwinnett going into historic Harbor Village, ensuring that there's a great connection over to Forsyth Park and Boundary and Louisville Roads, and all of the intersections, going through there, signalization, the timing, the sidewalks, the curbs are broken, and these need to be elevated as a course of this project. And so there are existing streets like Styles Avenue adjacent to the arena that need a remake, and so we're starting to look at what those street sections, sidewalk zones, planting, medians, lanes that can be repurposed for dedicated shuttle traffic around events at the arena, and so we're starting to study that. There are also new streets that are going to be needed, and one of those, the most prominent, we think, is Cohen Street, west of Boundary, and we think that it should be extended all the way over to Styles and beyond to Magazine Avenue to create a great new street that has long-term potential to be connected across the flyovers and the off-ramps from the expressway into the historic district. This main framework also needs other connections from Cohen down to Gwinnett Street. These are sketches, and all of this needs to be worked out, but this is a good idea, we think. And Cohen Street, because it moves in the direction of the canal, we think it plays a role also in stormwater management, and so there needs to be Green Street components where stormwater is collected and cleaned as it moves its way to the canal. There's a whole network of smaller streets that will need to come as a part of incremental redevelopment on different properties, and we think through this network, eventually you get to a framework that is a public framework of new streets, of new civic spaces, of new natural places, and also places where ultimately we think the city will grow. And so in this plan, we think that there's reinvestment in the neighborhood. We think there needs to be planning recommendations that work on transition zones, but this is a basic framework for growth. Within this, there are also ideas we have for new places, and this is things that we hear from you that we're bringing forward, but the idea of using the old Waterworks building to reestablish a municipal market in Savannah. There used to be the city market. It seems like this would be a great place to bring healthy food into this community and also be something that could dovetail with the arena. On top of this, of the market, we think this could be a location for job incubation, business incubation, particularly around food. And so this is an exciting idea for us. We also think of the new places that might evolve is the city lot. When we were out there for the groundbreaking, if many of you were out there, it had a wonderful festival atmosphere, and we think that that can continue to be cultivated with interim uses. Food trucks, places for people to have a drink before or after a game, potentially, places for people to gather, and that you could have sort of a midway space between the Waterworks building and the arena. Some important things that we see as an umbrella over the district. And so we have this framework of important issues, objectives that were specific objectives that come from those, and a list of 20 actions that we're putting on the table. I encourage you to look at this map out in the lobby, and it does this no justice to glance over it. But we've taken from that list just to highlight three items in each one of these categories. Y'all need somebody whose full-time job it is to work on protection of the community and the development of the Canal District. You need some agency authority whose full-time job it is to do that. Our recommendation. We think there needs to be an advocacy group that's created that loves the natural systems in Savannah, and they may already be out there, but someone needs to take ownership of the stormwater, of the maintenance of parks and open spaces in this district. You need the Friends of the Canal group. You need more funding mechanisms than you have in place presently to do all of this stuff. That it's not going to come from SPLOST. We think there needs to be a tax allocation district. This is nuanced. I'll let the panel field that one. But a revenue stream that wouldn't hit existing residents, but leverages the potential of future development in this district to fund infrastructure. That's what that does. The community needs protections. And so, one, we think there needs to be a district-wide local employment program that's put in place to give preference to local residents to have jobs that are created in the district. We believe there needs to be a community benefits framework that's put in place. It allows direct financial relationships between neighborhood groups for their needs out of a percentage of construction projects. And that needs legislation, that needs to be put in place. We think there are a suite of programs that need to be put in place for homeowners who presently reside in the district so that the community isn't busted up through all of this. And so, one, property tax relief, a real program for property tax relief to insulate current residents from increased property tax values, a home maintenance program for people who are struggling to maintain their homes, and new pathways to home ownership. This is very important. Hopefully that will also get addressed during the panel. There needs to be new ways to fund stormwater improvements in the city, a new utility, a credit bank to help the city build district amenities, and then charge developers, future developers, for the use of that stormwater infrastructure. This is done elsewhere, very important. A district-wide brownfield assessment. We need to know what's out there, what's in the soil, and how we can make sure that that doesn't stand in the way of polluting people's neighborhoods and inhibiting future development. And a neighborhood stormwater program that allows people to report incidents of flooding and get appropriate action out of that. And then the last piece, which I think is very important, but is pretty standard practice, is there needs to be a set of zoning, new zoning regulations. That the zoning needs to be changed in this area to ensure there's appropriate development and an overlay of protections into the community to help with transitions. I think there's a great idea about a lighting program, one for public safety, and that if it were smart, it could be tuned around events at the arena so that there's not always blaring light in the neighborhood. You do that with Wi-Fi, and that Wi-Fi could be an umbrella for this neighborhood to give people access to the internet. There needs to be a 3-year action plan for the arena and its infrastructure, and it needs to be carried through. These are some of the things that are on that list outside. These are big items, and so they need to be hotly debated.